Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here, and continuing with the Giant Killer series, in this video interview with Danny Padilla, he talks about the different cycles that were used during the Golden Era and goes into great detail into the introduction of growth hormone in bodybuilding. On top of that, in this video I will also be sharing what the late Ric Drasin and three-time Mr. Olympia Frank Zane had to say about the Golden Era cycles. First up, here is Danny.
I know you haven't got into much detail, but I know I once read a poem from Frank Zane, and I've also interviewed Ric Drasin. Would you say the cycle would have been similar to having, 3 or 4 Dianabol a day and a shot of Deca or Primabol in a week? Would that have been a similar
cycle? Back in my day, most of the guys took 3 D-ball. 1 for breakfast, 1 for lunch, and 1 for dinner. That's all you needed. And then they either used a test with a Prima, or sometimes the guys used Deca, depending on what your flavor was.
Right.
And then eventually, the Prima balling got better. And then I say later in our shows, the growth hormone came into factor. But see, back in our day, when the growth hormone was around, they got it from human cadavers. And then when AIDS broke out, they had to stop until they come up with the synthetic growth hormone.
So you're saying that even in the Golden Era, some people used growth hormone?
It was around. I can't say who used it or didn't, but it was already around. It was available.
Wow, I didn't know that. I've heard rumors, but this is the first time.
But it was there. Now I don't know anybody. I can't say, well, this guy used it. All I know is that it was there.
Wow.
Talking to an expert, he goes, well, they've got this product, growth hormone, but now I'm not an expert on that field either, but I remember, I believe that it was from Cadavers. They got the growth, and then when AIDS broke out, then all that had to stop because we were afraid. We didn't understand AIDS. What was it? You didn't know. So, everything changed. And then eventually, I guess they produced the growth hormone, the synthetic, and even then you don't know what's real and what's fake, and
that's true.
It's a big market out there.
So that cycle we just discussed would have been something similar that you did in your time.
For my time, believe it or not, I never used anything but Deca.
Okay, so not even an oral like the Dianabol.
Well, I would in the beginning I used 3D ball. And then later, I just stayed with the Deca. And I never used test. And that's why I have a full head of hair at the age of 70.
Man, so this was a real eye-opener, this interview with Danny. As we have heard from Danny Padilla, the cycles which Danny describes are quite similar to what both Ric Drasin has stated in the past, and is also similar to what Frank Zane has also stated. In my video interview with Ric Drasin, this is what Ric had to say about the typical Golden Era cycle in one of his very last interviews.
So would you mind if I ask him now about steroid usage in the Golden Era?
Yeah.
You would?
I live on a Dianabol sandwich.
So do you mind if I ask what kind of a cycle you guys did back then?
Well, there wasn't much around. There was Anavar, Winstrol, testosterone, and Deca, and pretty much that was it.
Right.
Nobody went overboard on it. We all had moderation.
Right.
But it got results.
What's moderation?
Well, it made you bigger and stronger, but not like today's guys.
I mean, what is moderation? How many? What would a typical cycle be like back then?
Maybe a cc of test and a cc of Deca per week with 3 Dianabol a day.
Okay. And that would be done throughout the whole year or just before competition?
Depends on the person.
Right.
Some people cycle and some people stay on a year round. And then when you ask them if they're on it, they say, no, I'm off right now. I'm just taking tests. So they're still on.
Yeah, fair enough. Right. So would you say test was then probably taken?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Would you say then that most people would, for example, take testosterone the whole year round and then go on and off the other anabolic steroids?
Yeah. Okay. Went through cycles like that. So you don't get too used to it.
Similar to this information provided by the late Ric Drasin, I recently acquired a rare copy of Frank Zane's training diaries, in which he describes the typical golden era cycles in a poem he wrote. The poem titled Last Night actually appears on page 72 of Frank Zane's personal training diaries. Halfway through the actual poem, it reads like this: remembering back 1970s dream, 2 characters, actors as deemed, Diana Bowl and Louis, Prima Bowl on, TV both of whom worked as a team, best bowlers in town. Primo drove 100 miles a week, combining 15 millis granola bars daily from Diana. Not worried about getting fat. You cannot. Not on that in those days. But that was then, this is now. A growing cast of actors shove, share center stage, all playing the same part, at the same time. I awoke amazed, wondering how this ridiculous play isn't dying by now. So as we have heard and read from all the legends, including Danny Padilla, the late Ric Drasin and Frank Zane, the cycles used during the golden era could include any of the following. For example, Danny Padilla describes his cycle as initially being 1 Diana bowl 3 times a day with meals for 8 to 12 weeks, after he then switched to a shot of Deca a week. He also does state that at Gold's Gym, the typical cycle could have been either a shot of Deca per week with 3 Diana bowl a day for 8 to 12 weeks, or a shot of Prima Bolin with testosterone per week with 3 Diana bowl per day for 8 to 12 weeks. In my interview with Ric Drasin prior to his passing, Ric lists the substances that were around, including Anavar, Winstrol, testosterone, and Deca, and of course Dianabol, and states that moderation was practiced when using these substances. He describes a typical cycle being 1 cc of testosterone with 1 cc of Deca weekly with 3 Dianabol per day, with some guys staying on testosterone throughout the year. Frank Zane's poem on the cycles used at Gold's Gym further elaborate on what Danny Padilla said about one of the golden era cycles he described as being 100 milligrams shot of Primobolan a week with testosterone and 3 5 milligram tablets of oral Dianabol per day. Now, although Danny, Frank, and Ric all mention moderation, the fact that growth hormone was available during the golden years from human cadavers was surely an eye-opener and an indication of where the sport was heading. To me, it was a shocking and very concerning to hear that the so-called experts, I'm assuming doctors, medical doctors, who were likely administering these substances or selling them were already pushing such substances on professional bodybuilders. It is likely too that some bodybuilders back then were already experimenting with growth hormone during the golden era, especially seeing that it was available. So although I don't necessarily like talking about this subject, I did find it interesting to hear practically the same information regarding the golden era cycles from 3 different people, and therefore I have to take what they said as the truth, which was the purpose of this video. This information is purely for educational purposes only and serves to show what kind of physiques were achieved during the golden years with the assisting substances they used. However, in no way am I advocating such practices, as I consider them dangerous. I just want to make that very, very clear. So I do hope you have enjoyed this video on the golden era cycles. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so, and please leave me your comments. Do you wish to hear of the cycles of other bodybuilders? Is this information something you wish to learn more about? I definitely find it insightful, but no further than that. Anyway, I do hope you have enjoyed the video. This is the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Danny Padilla's bodybuilding programs, he produced 4 booklets which I am now selling through my website as ebooks, through my collaboration, of course, with Danny, including Plan to Win, my system for successful bodybuilding, as well as chest and back, shoulders and arms, and legs and abdominals, which tend to be more specialization courses. These booklets are filled with awesome knowledge from one of the bodybuilding greats, with my personal favorite being Plan to Win. This booklet is awesome. Now, these 4 booklets are some of the most honest booklets I have ever read, because in these booklets, Danny teaches you the importance of goal setting and describes the important differences between what makes a novice, intermediate, and advanced bodybuilder and what it takes to get there. All available at www.goldenerabookworm.com. Need a bodybuilding poster for your gym or office? Then check out Ironman Magazine archive.smugmug.com for the highest quality posters on the planet. Scroll through the galleries of all the legends, including greats such as Arnold, Frank Zane, Sergio Oliva, Serge Nubret, Tom Platz, and Larry Scott, and much, much more, and select your poster now. To support your favorite YouTube channel, please visit teespring.com/store/Golden Era Bookworm for merchandise, including t-shirts, hoodies, face masks, phone cases, and much, much more. Once again at teespring.com/store/Golden Era Bookworm. Become a patron at www.patreon.com/Golden Era Bookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the golden era of bodybuilding. To take full advantage of my collaborations, use code GEB20 with NSPNutrition.com and VinceGironda.com, as well as code BOOKWORM12 at OSL.com for a discount at checkout.